because. Okay, good evening. It is Tuesday, the 14th of June. I would like to call to order the June 14th meeting of the Common Council. If you would please stand and join me in pledging allegiance to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Burnett. Mr. Burnett,
Present.
Mr. Goldstein,
Here.
Ms. Johnson,
Here.
Ms. Najolski Eichner,
Present.
Ms. Smith,
Here.
Ms. Ayers,
Here.
Mr. Ubelman,
Present.
Ms. Revoluz, Ms. Revoluz, Ms. Young,
Here.
Mr. Kites,
Here.
thank you, Ms. McMurray,
Present.
Ms. Alterman,
Here.
Mr. Keegan,
Here.
Mr. Livingston,
Here.
Ms. Shanahan,
Here.
Ms. Revoluz. 14, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item of business is the acceptance of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 24th, 2022. Do I have a motion? Ms. Shanahan moves. Any corrections, deletions, omissions, additions? Seeing none, all in favor of the minutes as submitted? It looks like we have a unanimous vote. Thank you. Next item is the acceptance of the minutes of the special meeting of June 6, 2022. Ms. McMurray makes the motion. Any corrections, deletions, omissions? Mr. Livingston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 3, the third paragraph from the top, the last sentence says that additional funding was approved. It should read, the additional school funding was approved.
Okay, any further corrections? Seeing none, all in favor of the minutes as corrected? Motion- Any abstention or? Oh, okay. So no abstentions, no objections, okay. Okay, so next is public participation. Do we have anybody that's waiting to address the council? I'm sorry?
A1.
You have one person? Okay. If you'll bring that person on.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tanner Thompson. I'm the chair of the Bike Walk Advisory Commission for the city. I'm here for a couple of reasons. First is to speak in support of Emily Berneman as an appointee to my commission. Emily has been involved with with our commission already now for several months and has been an excellent participant and has already taken on some volunteer responsibility for our social media presence, where she's done an amazing job. She has lots of professional experience with digital media, websites, social media, that kind of stuff, and has been able to already contribute in those domains and others to the Bike Walk Commission. She's also a regular user of our sidewalks and our bike lanes, living in the middle of South Norwalk and doing a lot of her daily life on foot and on bike. So I think that she will make a very valuable asset to the Bike Walk Commission if she's in fact appointed. So I strongly support that. The other thing I'd like to comment on, I am actually calling in from Cambridge, Massachusetts, where Vanessa Valladares and I from DPW just attended a 2-day seminar about building walkable cities here at Harvard, taught by Jeff Speck, who wrote the book Walkable City, which is essentially the seminal book on walkable cities. We both had a great experience, and we'd both be happy to share more of what we learned at length if anybody is interested. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Anybody else waiting to address the council? Seeing none, does any council person have correspondence that they feel needs to be read into the record from one of their constituents? Okay, so we will close public participation. We have under resignations and appointments, as Mr. Thompson just mentioned, Miss Emily Berneman to the Bike Walk Commission. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mayor.
Mr. Goldstein.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to nominate Emily Berneman as a member of the Bike Walk Commission. As Tanner Thompson said just a few moments ago, Emily has significant experience in digital media and social media marketing. But more important, I want to talk about how I know Emily, which is if any of you have ever been to a Keep Norwalk Beautiful event in the last 2 years, Emily is a fixture at these events. She is someone who you gotta love a person who's willing to get up early on a Saturday morning and go clean up trash. That's the kind of person who's supposed to be in public service. And Emily is absolutely that kind of person. I know her to have great integrity, great a spirit and a willingness to improve the city. And she's exactly the kind of person who should be on the Bike Walk Commission. So I hope that the council joins me in unanimously supporting her nomination.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. Any further discussion? Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to also second this. I met Emily actually through Tanner, who introduced me when we were unveiling the beautiful new bike rack in South Norwalk at that event, and had a great conversation with Emily. Very passionate about these issues about sustainability and walkability and how they're completely intertwined. And so I'm very, very excited about her as an addition to this Bike Walk Commission. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any further comment or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, that brings us to a couple of very few comments that I have. One is, if you've been following the weekly COVID report and looking at the numbers in the paper, our numbers are starting to go down in Norwalk, thankfully. Again, it's a testament to the people that have done all the things they know that can reduce the amount of COVID spread, getting their vaccines, wearing masks when they feel it's appropriate, staying home when they don't feel well, getting boosted. And the numbers are going down, and we're not out of the woods yet, but there's, and I know I've said this about 200 or 300 times during the last 2 years, there's light at the end of the tunnel. So I hope that light keeps shining. So again, thank you to everybody. And there are still testing facilities in Norwalk, and there's things on the website as to where we can find vaccine boosters, or you can get your original vaccine if you haven't gotten them yet. A lot of you just attended with me this afternoon the Wall Street Design public hearing. Really good turnout. We're investing millions and millions of dollars into the Wall Street area, something that has been overdue for many years. That used to be a very vibrant downtown area with places like Greens and Kitty Town and Charlie's Army and Navy store and Loman's and not Loman's.
Bargain World.
Bargain World. Oh yeah, Bargain World. The amazing stores and the Path Park and the old Norwalk Theater that we had the meeting in right now, that I used to go and watch the movies. I think it was about a quarter to get in the movies, and I walked right down the street. I lived right around the corner.
Talkies.
Pardon me?
Talkies.
Talkies. They were in color. Most of them were color. The cartoons were color, but it was so interesting because I was maybe 6 years old and 7 years old, and I'd walk down and go to the movies by myself. Just walk right in, and it was just a lot of fun. Popcorn was a dime. But anyway,
I thought you said it was a quarter, like 20 minutes ago.
That was the
no,
best
popcorn was a
addition?
dime.
All right.
Getting
All right,
into
all
the
right,
movie.
all right, all right, all right.
You have to start paying attention.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right, guys.
So, okay, Diana Revolus has joined at 7:40 p.m. Make a note of that. So again, it's going to be interesting. Watch what's going to be happening in the Wall Street area. And we have a special press conference coming up on Thursday. I won't go into any details right now, but I think some of you or most of you have gotten the invitation to join us. So that's all that I have, and I'll turn the floor over to the council president, Mr. Livingston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As my first item of business tonight, it's my pleasure to move the appointment of Jordan Chance as Assistant City Clerk. Jordan comes to us from the Office of the Nassau County Executive, where he previously served as Legislative Liaison. In that role, he was the primary liaison between the county executive's office and the county legislature. Before that, he served as special assistant to the county executive, where he advanced and advocated for legislative priorities of the administration. Jordan has a master's of public administration. I think we're very lucky to have him. I know we're all looking forward to working with Jordan, and I heartily recommend his appointment. With that, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, signify by raising their hands. Any opposed? Oh, so it is unanimous. Congratulations, Bill. I'll make a couple remarks.
Now, I've been paying him for the past week.
I hope he gets a raise.
I haven't seen that check yet. I just want to make that very
Yeah,
clear.
better cash it now, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. First off, I wanted to thank Council President Tom Livingston for the kind remarks. And I want to thank every one of you for considering my appointment as the Assistant City Clerk at tonight's meeting. I want to thank both Mayor Rilling as well as the Common Council for the opportunity to work for the people of Norwalk. Public service is a calling, and it's truly something that's very important to me, as I know it's important to each and every single one of you. And I just want to, and I'll be very brief, and I just want to let you know that I'm looking forward to working closely with this council and getting to know the members and learning more, not only about just your experiences and your ideas and your priorities, but learning what it is you think, what makes Norwalk such a special place to call home. And I really look forward to getting that opportunity to get to know each and every one of you and learning more about your background experiences and exactly why you love Norwalk so much and why I can't wait to learn to love it as well. So I thank you again for the opportunity, and that's all I'll have to say tonight.
Okay, moving on. Next item is the adoption of amendments to the rules of the Common Council and adoption of the Code of Conduct for Norwalk Common Council members. Before I do that, I'd like to propose one amendment to the document that was sent around, and that is to add a new paragraph 27 that says ad hoc or special committees may be created by resolution or motion of the Common Council or upon order of the Council President and shall be governed by Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure. That language is being added based upon some comments received to the rules to anticipate and cover special and ad hoc committees. So that language is from Mason's, and I propose it be added as amendment as a new rule 27. Also, as part of the amendment, I'm going to propose that item rule 19, we add the words PM after 7:30. And so those are the only amendments, and I would ask for a vote on the amendments, and I'll ask for a vote on the item itself. So all in favor of the amendments as proposed? Okay, any opposed? No. Okay, I'll now call for a vote on the rules as amended. All in favor? Okay, any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, and next we have Chief Carr to give an update on flood mitigation project status and analysis.
Thank you, Council President Livingston and Mayor and Common Council. Good evening. For the record, my name is Anthony Carr, Chief of Operations and Public Works. Over the last few months, the greater part of the last few months, there's been a lot of progress in our capital planning and our design for flood mitigation projects. We know this is a very important topic, both from the public safety and welfare perspective, and also for the operation of the city. So we felt it was prudent that a brief presentation, so there'll be two presentations presented to the Common Council, to the Mayor and Common Council tonight. The first will be a presentation by the Department of Public Works. I will be presenting that for about 15 minutes on all the projects, with the exception of the New Canaan Ponus Avenue flood mitigation study. That project will be separately presented by Woodard and Curran, with the consulting engineers for that project. So you'll hear me for 15 minutes, and then you'll hear from the staff from Woodard and Curran for approximately 15 to 20 minutes, since that project is a fairly significant and extensive project, and we really want everybody here to understand the amount of effort that's gone into the project so far, and some planning consideration moving forward to make the best decision possible with the information that we have today. But again, that'll be after myself. So Jeff, do you have the presentation on the desktop that you could share the screen with? And I'll just run through each slide, talk to each slide. But if you could share your screen, that would be helpful. And while Jeff's working on that, so there's several slides that you'll see for the Public Works presentation. And again, just a brief overview, we are discussing 6 projects minus the new Cayman Ponus Avenue project. Again, so that really 5 projects tonight. We want to provide a little bit of a background of what we've done so far after Tropical Storm Elsa and Ida, how that data is collected, how everything ties together, and how we make the decisions that we've had made, that we do make daily and have made thus far. Okay, so Mayor, Common Council, if everybody's ready, and we could save questions to the end, but if it really is an important question, you don't want to forget it, please feel free to interrupt during the presentation. So again, this is the flood mitigation project status presentation. I will be presenting on behalf of DPW. Brief agenda. There's really 3 major points that we want to take away from tonight's presentation. One is to discuss some of the flooding events, major flooding events, specifically Ida and Elsa, where we've collected some important data that ties into a little bit later of the items that we discuss. Where that data goes, which is a generation of flooding event maps, again, for Tropical Storm Elsa and Ida. And then 6 of the projects, one of which will be handled and discussed in further detail by Wood and Curran. Next slide, please. So the construction of any flood mitigation project or drainage improvement project, it really starts with the data, right? So the better data that you have going in, the better is generally the better results in the end. So it's garbage in, garbage out type of deal. So for the flooding events, for this data collection, it's important to note that there's multiple sources for this data. And that ranges anywhere from calls that DPW gets to field observations by DPW staff. And of course, the infamous emails that we all receive and have come to love near and dear to our hearts on a daily basis. But aside from the emails, we do get a lot of calls through customer service, which is very helpful and beneficial. And I'll get into a little bit more detail on how those customer service calls tie into CityWorks and how that ties into what we give the consultant to generate the stormwater models. Crisis Track is an application that our emergency management team uses, again, and that's tied into FEMA. And basically, it's a consolidation or a database that tracks any incident and sub-incidents. So if there's flooding in homes, there's flooding in the right of way. Michelle DeLuca typically oversees, she's the Deputy Director of Emergency Management. I'm the Chief Gatto, the Director of Emergency Management, oversees the usage and application of that software. But you'll see from the July 9th, 21 Elsa event, we received 71 total combined flooding locations. And under the storm event for Tropical Storm Ida, we received approximately 200. So now that's locations, and that could be a combination of parcels, and that could be a combination of observations within the right of way. So if there's segments of road that flooded, whether it was the first time or the multiple times, if it was observed by DPW staff or it was reported by any entity, it was captured. Now we all know the city of Norwalk has the greater of 20,000 parcels, right? So we all know that 71 and 194 are not necessarily what has been reported. But that's when we turn to our historic information. The staff that's been here 10, 15, 20, 25 years, a lot of them are very familiar with the hotspots, problem areas, all the superintendents, the foremen, the engineers. I was fortunate to come into an organization where there was still an abundant amount of institutional knowledge. So again, flooding is typically historical. Yes, it's been worse with time, but it's also a very historical thing too, right? Which is why the events have recurrence intervals like the 1, the 10, the 100-year storm that you hear. But again, not to get into too much technical detail. So the pictures that you see on the slide are actual flood pictures taken from various locations throughout the city from each of those 2 storm events. Next slide, please. So from the data comes the mapping, and I believe Mayor and Common Council, both of these maps I've shared with you. And I don't want to get into too much detail with the maps, but you'll see that the map on the left is from Tropical Storm Elsa. The map on the right is from Tropical Storm Ida. So what does this mean? So you'll see a lot of different colors on the maps. You'll see parcels that squares that are with a red color, and that's to identify that, hey, parcel called in, whether it was email, email, phone call, but they've contacted the Department of Public Works. So any kind of property that you see on there that's red is a property that we're made aware of that experienced flooding during each of these 2 events. The areas that are clouded are areas in the road, meaning that we either saw them, we being DPW, another city department, or the resident who called didn't give an address. They just said, hey, road A is flooding. So those roads, those properties, they're all highlighted and they're all indicated on the map. And how does that help us? So for example, you'll see on both maps, in the western part of Norwalk and eastern part of Norwalk, closer to the top, below Route 15, you'll see a blue boundary and a red boundary on both maps, a bigger boundary. And those boundaries are the drainage study limits, if you will, for the watersheds of the Dreamy Hollow, Betts Brook watershed, which is, that project is currently under construction, and the New Ponus Avenue watershed, also, which is currently in concept and would come discussed in a little while. But you'll notice that some of the areas that were affected during the flooding are within those boundaries. And again, this map is not a know-all, end-all, capture-all, but it gives us a good indication of where we should start looking if we're not looking there already. But it also validates a lot of the field data that the staff has collected over decades, way before I've arrived at the city of Norwalk. In the bottom left corner of each map, you'll see notes. And again, this was shared, and we could have offline discussions or certainly follow-up questions. But you'll see notes that basically give statistics of the storm, how many inches and how much time and what storm event that would translate to, whether it was a 50-year or 2% annual chance storm occurring. It has other statistics too, how big the landmass area is in Norwalk, which is 22.8 square miles, which is about 14,600 acres. So it gives the stats, and it shows that those two boundaries that you see, the red and the blue, they account for about 3% of each of the city. So, so those two study areas equate to 6% of the city's landmass. Now, if you add in the water, it's 30 plus square miles. But again, all those numbers give you an idea of a magnitude when you see it on a map. And I'm a picture person. Many people are, and it really kind of draws a picture. And if you see, it all starts with the data that we get, right, or that we have already. We interpolate that, combine it together, we generate maps. Now, maps are not the only thing that we generate. We also update our CityWorks software, which is basically our asset management software that shows where the storm drains are located, where the sanitary sewer is located, when we've lined it, if we've lined a sanitary sewer pipe, or if there was an issue at a catch basin. All those notes are put into CityWorks, so we have a good track of how the assets are being managed and where they are in the right of way, which then helps the consultant model, okay, what's going on now? Then they simulate a rainfall event for various storm events. And then they say, okay, well, what are the different flood mitigation options we have to alleviate XYZ flooding? Next slide, please. So you'll see from this slide, especially, I'll draw your attention to the map first. So the areas that are orange is the area that we currently have a construction project. The areas that are purple are projects that are under design. So again, there's 6 projects shown. The numbers that you see in each of those shaded areas correspond to the number on the left of what the project name is. So Betts Brook is obviously number 1. That's orange. That's all the way on the east Norwalk. But that's the Betts Brook Dreamy Hollow project, where we're currently in construction for drainage, sanitary, water main improvements. But as you go down the list, again, you'll see New Cane will be handled separately. 4 is Mountain Street. But what's really important on this map is that it shows a fair and equitable geographical spread of the various flood mitigation projects going on in the city. And again, we don't only have 6 projects going on, but these I would venture to say are the most significant, whether it's the design cost, the construction cost, or the amount of homes that will be improved as a result of the project. So there's a lot of other drainage work going on under our drainage improvements contract. Our contract is Rondano. You've probably heard that name. And those are smaller projects, adding additional catch basins, fixing catch basins, making some of the storm sewer pipes bigger in the street. Those are not highlighted, but those are certainly very important as well for the overall maintenance and performance of our storm sewer system. So again, it is important to note that we do cover the east, west, north, and south, and that map will only expand in the future, which was the ultimate goal of what we're doing and what we're going to be presenting today. Next slide, please. So this is the Betts Brook Dreamy Hollow drainage project. This project was on the books for at least 30 years. There was a lot of residents who had rightful concerns of flooding and sanitary sewer issues in that area. So Woodard & Curran is the project engineer for this. Obviously, they're on the line too. And this was a nice project in the sense that it really was a team effort between Woodard & Curran, DPW, the entire department, operations, engineering, And we've had multiple flood forum workshops where we discussed firsthand accounts from the residents. Okay, here's how far it floods, here's how deep it floods, because that information is important, because we actually did give that to Woodard and Curran while they performed their hydraulic and hydrologic model. So hydrology is the study of how water behaves over land. Hydraulics is the study of how water behaves in a channel. That could be an open channel like a brook, a stream, or river, or it could be a closed channel like a pipe. So when you hear the term H&H, which is nothing more than a fancy technical term for a drainage analysis. But this project is very important. I'm glad I was part of it along with the team, because again, this is decades in the making. It includes about a half a mile of storm drainage improvements, about a half a mile of sanitary sewer improvements, and about a quarter mile of water main improvements. And this is important because if you look at the map as well, the area itself is shaded like a beige color. The outline of the red area is about 400 acres. And that's the study area, the watershed, or where the water drains to one point, which is generally Friendly Pond. But if you look towards the upper half, you'll see purple lines in there. Those purple lines are the proposed locations of these storm drainage improvements, whether they're the big box culverts going down the street or upgrades at Dry Hill, at the Dry Hill outlet. So these upgrades, basically, storm sewer exists currently on Friendly Road and Daphne Drive and Saddle Road. And also there is an outfall that goes underneath the road that serves the discharge from Friendly Pond, conveys that water from an open brook and goes under the road and then goes to another open area and eventually to the North River. But those upgrades are concentrated generally in the Friendly Road, the Daphne Drive, and the Saddle Road area. And again, with that one pipe increase underneath Dry Hill Road. But it really puts it in perspective, because with that half a mile of storm sewer and that half a mile of sanitary sewer and the quarter mile of water, it was a $7.1 million construction cost. And that doesn't include the $1 million plus minus that WPCA is allocating for the sanitary sewer improvements. So aside from the drainage issues that have plagued the area for quite a bit, why was the drainage issues there? So the topography of that area is generally flat. The soil doesn't percolate or infiltrate water very well. So there's been a lot of settlement of utilities. There's been settlement of homes, which is why a lot of the homes constructed in that area don't have basements. They have what's called rat slabs or small floors. Some don't have them at all. Some of them have piers supporting their concrete floor, their first floor. So there was a reason why the developer didn't build a basement in that area. So obviously, fast forward a few decades later, I know that there's been several pushes by various individuals to get this project going. And I know that the mayor and the common council are a very big proponent, because this is the biggest drainage project we've done in an extremely long time. And from what staff advised me, is probably the biggest. So again, thank you for your support on that. I know this is a big price tag, and it seems like maybe you're only getting very little, only a half mile here, half mile there, but you'll see in the next slide, and it actually does a little bit more than just that half mile. So Jeff, next slide, please. And just to note too, that construction schedule, it started in the spring more with the administrative end, shop drawing reviews, which is, if the contractor is building something in the street, he has to give us drawings for us to approve to make sure it matches what's in the plans, the bonding, the insurance, so that the actual construction is starting within these upcoming weeks and is anticipated to be completed by spring of 2023. But and this table is extremely important because yes, it was an $8 million project. Yes, it's only a half a mile of storm drainage, a half mile of sanitary sewer, but the number of homes and structures that experience significant reduced flooding, and that's anywhere from several inches to several feet, is approximately 50. And I think, I've done this a long time, and if you can remove more than 10 homes, if you can remove any home from a flooding issue, it's obviously a win for the municipality. But unfortunately, we're bound by cost, and there's always that cost-benefit ratio. And it's something that FEMA uses very closely to evaluate any project. But in this particular case, you'll see it's about $8 million minus the $1 million for the sanitary sewer improvements, about $7 million to benefit approximately 50 homes. And again, these homes were plagued with not only flooding issues, but also sanitary sewer issues because of the poor soil conditions under the pipes. The pipes settled, they became low in some spots. So that means they tend to trap debris, cleaning products and clog the pipes, and then you get backups. Some of the pipes were actually pitched, instead of going from uphill to downhill, they were pitched from downhill to the other direction, which is called a back pitch pipe. And that's not something you want. You want things to flow from the higher level to the lower level. And generally, you won't run into too many issues if that's what's going on. But unfortunately, site conditions exist there that prevented that from happening in some locations. But again, the description here is exactly what was said before. This project entails upgrades, storm sewer upgrades, and in some locations, big box culverts, very similar to the Rowayne Avenue Bridge project. So that's, if you want to take a look at that, that's being actually constructed as we speak, and the box culverts were delivered yesterday and being picked and set off the crane today and tomorrow. So, but the point is that there's major infrastructure improvements on the Daphne Drive, on the Saddle Road area and the Assisi Way. But even though it's only limited to those 3 or 4 or 5 roads within the 400-acre watershed, it does benefit approximately 50 homes. Next slide, please. Second project is Lockwood Lane, Heather Lane drainage improvement. So this project is currently in design, and the projects that I'm going to be discussing briefly from this point on are all in design. That previous project is the only one that's in construction. So Lockwood Lane and Heather Lane, this was an old project in the sense that the downstream portion of the drainage from the Norwalk River to approximately 21 Lockwood Lane was completed in 2012. So this second segment, or the phase 2, if you will now be constructed under this project. In 2012, my understanding from staff is that the capital funding wasn't available to complete the remainder of the project from the 21 Lockwood Lane up to Heather's Lane. So this is, again, another project, historic issues that were definitely exacerbated during Tropical Storm Elsa and Ida. We received complaints even, like I said, prior to that in our flooding database, but they were obviously inundated during during Tropical Storm Elsa and Ida. So Heather's Lane is really suffering the bulk of that area, but and this is a 55-acre watershed too. So we're not at a point yet where the documents are finished for the contractor bidding, but the status as of now is that we are currently under design, and our projected schedule is to have the project completed by May of 2022, and then the design work, and then with the construction entailing really the better part of next year, because the next few projects that you're going to see are really dependent on the capital funding that's received in fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25. And again, that's something that the department will work with the administration on and obviously give further updates. But it's important to know that this is just for the design. So that schedule is just for the completion of the design. Ideally, if we have the funding, we would bid that out in the fall, the winter of next year. But again, it's all going to depend on how much capital funding is available this year, and also a request for next year. But this cost was $237,000 just for the design work. And again, that advances a storm sewer design from conceptual all the way to contractor bidding. So the drawings and the specs that are required for a contractor to place a construction bid basically will be the deliverable. We'll put it out to bid, and then obviously the construction would occur at some point after we put it out to bid, several weeks after. But again, this ties up the second phase of the Lockwood drainage improvements, which were a huge undertaking back in 2012. I believe that the pipe was upgraded to 60-inch diameter plastic pipe. I believe the prior pipe before that was 36 inches. So 3 feet to 5 feet is definitely a significant increase for the storm sewer. But this is an important project. Ty and Bond is doing an excellent job with where they are, and we're working with them as well as with the other consultants to make sure these projects stay on track. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the New Canaan Ponus Avenue Drainage Improvements Project, as noted earlier. The status of this project is that we've come close to completing a flood mitigation study. That study has various alternatives and, of course, associated budgetary construction costs. Woodland and Curran will be presenting this project immediately after this presentation. Next slide, please. Fountain Street drainage improvements. Again, this is only in a concept study with Ty and Bond. That's the consultant. They will be preparing a flood mitigation analysis, very similar to what Woodland and Curran is doing, where there'll be a menu of options and a variety of improvements that will be on a scaled factor of least costly to most costly, most benefit to least benefit. And really, the intent of these flood mitigation studies is to prepare a matrix which helps us make better recommendations to you as to which way we should proceed. So we're not going to necessarily recommend something that is cost prohibitive, but we're also not going to recommend something that benefits one parcel. There needs to be that healthy balance between cost and public safety and welfare. So we feel that our consultants and this department do a very good job of balancing the two. But again, this watershed is a significant watershed. We don't have the acreage, but this has been a long-standing problem. Fountain Street is a low area, and what compounds the problem there is the presence of the railroad tracks. So if you look right in that purple area, which is the project limits, there is the railroad there. What tends to happen is when railroads come through, instead of water being able to drain from point A to point B, the railroads kind of act as a dam and they impede the water. So what do we do as engineers and as public works departments? We put pipes under the railroad and we put ditches and swales and channels to try to bring the water from point A to point B. Well, unfortunately, pipes need to increase over time. And unfortunately, those swales and those channels become clogged over time to no one's detriment. It just is a naturally occurring scenario in nature. And unfortunately, it does cause water to impede and not be effectively conveyed from where it needs to go. So the consultant is looking at that area. And again, during Tropical Storm Elsa and Ida, there was significant flooding in that area, at least several feet. And again, in my experience, railroads are notorious. Whenever you see a railroad, I can almost guarantee you there's flooding conditions adjacent to it. And that's partly on the railroad's fault, because I've seen that happen many times, but also to just the progressive nature and moving forward with climate change and other factors. So next slide, please. Fifth project in design is the Glendenning Street watershed drainage improvements. Again, we're in a concept study with Woodland and Curran. Glendenning, right near Old Lantern Place. Again, another historic area, always prone to flooding. DPW was aware of the flooding conditions in this area, in part due to somewhat undersized drainage structure, the topography of the land, the fact that part of the area is in a low area or a bowl or a low point. So this is in concept. Woodland and Curran is also working on this. This costs almost $200,000, and this is just for the study. And that study is projected to finish late summer, early fall. And what's going to happen is, once this study is completed, again, they're going to give us different alternatives on Glendenning Street and that whole Cannon Street neighborhood, which comprises almost about 125 acres of watershed. So if you remember, the other watershed earlier was 55 acres. The Dreamy Hollow was 400 acres. The new Canaan Ponus Avenue is about 600 acres. So this is 125. This is not small. And again, we're aware of this problem. Staff has this noted, and we're going to come up with a design that will effectively mitigate the flooding in this area. Next slide, please. Glenwood Avenue and Clinton Avenue watershed. So this was, again, also an area that was impacted pretty significantly during Tropical Storm Elsa and Ida. This watershed acreage is approximately 250 acres. So again, that's not a small watershed. And a watershed basically it's an area or a boundary that where rainfall accumulates to a single point or to a combined area. So areas outside of this purple circle generally drain in a different direction. Again, this is a concept study, and this is to provide the same menu of different flood mitigation options that we have available to us that balances the aspect of public safety and welfare, plus the needs of the neighborhood, plus the cost. Now, again, this schedule is for the design only, and this is anticipated to be completed in fall of 2022. And again, this will be another project that we'll discuss with the administration, and we'll work to prioritize what projects, whether it's this next fiscal year or the fiscal year after that, or if there's available grant funding, or a combination of all three of those things. Some of these projects too can be phased. They don't necessarily need to be done in 1 year, and you would typically start with the downstream segment of the project first, from a constructability standpoint, because you don't want to make conditions better upstream and then send water downstream somewhere else faster. It's almost detrimental to the overall intent. Next slide, please. And with that,
Thank you, Mr. Carr. It really helps bring home the fact that the flooding events occur all across the city. And I really appreciate what you've shown us in terms of all the work you're doing, all the work that is to be done. Are there any questions for Mr. Carr before we turn it over to Woodward, I guess it is?
Yes.
I don't know if this is something that is going to be part of the next presentation, but obviously a lot of these studies are happening now and the designs are happening now, but we've got a summer coming up where there's going to be presumably flooding events. I'm wondering what mitigation efforts you have or are considering for this season. We're thinking more short-term instead of the future. But I don't know if that's something that needs to be held off after the rest of the presentation.
Well, no, just to answer, Councilman, we have our recorded, when I say our DPW's known hotspots, there's over 20 hotspots that we have in the city where operations staff works with engineering. They go out several days before large storm events. We make sure that the drains are clear, the debris is clear, grades are clear, pipes are clear, that there's no standing pooling water. But other than short of that, the purpose of these flood mitigation studies is to tell us what the correct improvement is. And unfortunately, the design requires time and capital funding. And then once we get those recommendations, the fix requires capital funding, which, as you've seen from the Dreamy Hollow project, could be fairly significant. So that's why we're trying to plan and balance and move all the different parts at the same time. So in short term, unfortunately, there's not much we can do other than what we're doing now.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So Councilman Livingston, at this point, our presentation for DPW has been concluded, but I'd like to turn it over to Wood and Curran and their team to discuss and share their findings for the New Canaan Ponus Avenue flood mitigation study. And Jeff, Wood and Curran has their presentation. So whoever needs access to share their screen, just please grant them the access. I believe it'll be Joe Kirby, but I'll kick it off to Anthony Catalano to introduce his team from Wood and Curran. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this Chief, this is Joe Kirby. I'm not sure Anthony was able to make it. I think he had technical difficulties in this world of Zoom we're living in today. I do apologize. But as the chief noted, my name is Joseph Kirby. I am the lead engineer for the flood mitigations for Norwalk. And today I wanted to go through and present on, yes, and I've just lost my train of thought as Anthony came online. I want to go through and present on Canaan Ponus. Anthony, would you like to add anything as I just introduced you? Still can't hear you. All right, I'll get it. All right, let me present, share my screen. Share. And go to the presentation. Okay, again, we are finishing up the New Canaan Ponus Ave. We have done a slew of mitigation alternatives. The three in general I'm going to present to you today were the ones that kind of rose to the top, and with our work with DPW, wanted to be the final alternatives that we present. And so there's a full understanding of the analysis that we've done, and we've covered it at every angle. So as many of you know, it's a Ponus New Canaan area is about 1 square mile, 610 acres. It's a very steep watershed. One of the challenges in this watershed is that it's so steep and the water moves so quickly through it. So we're having to literally reach out and grab the water. You need to build infrastructure where the water is. You really can't open up too many holes. And this is contrary to like the Friendly Pond area where it was very shallow drainage. We had to put things on piles. As long as we could put a pipe there, we could absorb a lot of water. This is a very different situation. The flooding is a little bit shallower in general, but there are some deep spots. Especially in through here on Mystic, and we'll get some better slides down here at the ballparks. Let me see if I can get this off my screen. And down here to the river. It's so again, relatively flash flooding, about 108 acres of current floodplain, and not very deep floodplain. It's pretty much contained to channels or areas around channels. So it's a typical floodplain. What I want to show with this video, and I might have to show another video to kind of prove my point, but the issue with this, and when we see it flow, we don't really see, this is an animation of the water. At time zero, it starts to rain, and then the water collects, it builds up, and then it starts running through the watershed. And as you can see, it does run through, but it runs quickly through. There isn't a big flush of water. And just real quickly, if I can do this quickly to show you the alternative to that. This is the Friendly Pond area. And when you see this flood, you see the water builds up and builds up and builds up in Friendly Pond, and then it flushes itself to Betts Pond Brook. And that's what we see in a typical scenario. And you need to treat these a little differently. And that was one of the challenges, again, with the Ponus Avenue Canaan study. Get into the mitigations. So there are three primary mitigations I want to talk about. And the first one is a new trunk line. And new is a strong word. It's really an updated trunk line. Most of this path of this new pipe system from the stream channel that crosses Ponus Ave all the way down to the river already has pipe in it. What we're doing is building larger pipe. We're upgrading it to typically box pipe or large round culverts, so we can move a lot of water. In this map, you'll notice that we have turned on the purple diamonds are the complaints from your CityWorks system. So complaints that come into your help desk get entered in CityWorks, and we have them highlighted here. And then the data, this is the IDA data observed. The green, I believe, is sewer, and the red is stormwater complaints during IDA. So we have that information turned on just for your reference. And then the purple lines are sewer, and the blue lines are existing drainage system, just so we kind of have a reference of what we're looking at. So this project is actually pretty effective. It's about 12 million. I believe it's about 1.2 miles of pipe with all the turns and everything. We're estimating the cost at about 12 million. Again, one of the big differences from Friendly Pond to here, we're not putting things on piles. We can put things in with large slopes. We can move a lot of water with these pipes. So we do have a really good impact when we do this. So what this map shows is the yellow is the existing floodplain, the blue is the new floodplain. All these markers, the green are buildings removed from the floodplain, the white are buildings with reduced flooding depth. So there's less water that will impact the building. And as you can see, we're at about 105 structures that have improvement with this system, which will, as Chief noted earlier, will give us a much better cost-benefit ratio, be a lot easier to get funding for than other projects that impact less buildings. When we actually look at the flood depths, we're doing reductions of anywhere from, well, we typically start at 0.2 feet, but all the way up into, over 1.5 feet. These areas down here by the ballparks, and this area in here in Mystic Ave, with substantial flooding, and a little bit of less in Lloyd, and then more up where again the stream crosses Ponus Ave, where we're picking up all the water. Now, the other note on this system is that this system will pick up water throughout its length. We're tying it into the regular drainage. We're adding additional inlets. So we pick up water. Any water that initially runs on the ball fields down here is taken out before any of this water interacts with it. So it's like a new drainage design or update to what was there existing, and gives you a lot of bang for the buck. Because this project is substantial and it can be quite costly, we did look at phasing the project. We looked at doing a downstream phase and an upstream phase. and we analyzed them separately, just so we could come up with some, a little bit, some new statistics, because there will be, quite a time period usually in between phases. So we're looking at a reduction of buildings impacted. And I'm just going to skip to the next slide. The reason for that is because, again, in this basin, we really have to reach out to the water to get it to move any faster. And so 90% of our improvements are downstream. We're picking up a lot of water here that would flow in this direction, which is why all these areas have had either reduction or been removed. But again, still about 58 buildings were impacted. And this will be the initial phase of the new trunk line. Again, in flood reductions, we didn't do the map, but we are looking at about 0.2 to the 2 feet. And again, down by the ball field, we get a substantial reduction, and even more reduction with just the downstream going in, because this water takes longer to get there. So it is quite an improvement. When we're looking at the upstream phase, it is possible to do this. You do get the targeted relief to the people up here upstream of New Canaan. But there are some negative impacts downstream, which we'd have to deal with. And what this does is it takes a new drainage system, larger improved drainage system, and runs it into the old system. Only on Silver-Minded, we have to do any kind of an update to have a consistent flow through the pipe, but we still are overwhelming this system, which is the reason we originally proposed replacing it. So when we look at this, we have the substantial improvement upstream, significant reductions in floodplain, several buildings removed, lots of buildings with reductions. But unfortunately, when we look downstream, we're impacting buildings. It's not substantial, but it is an impact. So we can't, in good faith, recommend doing an upstream phase without a downstream phase. Another option we looked at, we know had been talked about a lot, was putting in a pump station here. And again, at picking up water where the stream crosses Ponus Ave. And again, the key of this is that we're picking up the water before it can run down here and flood the lower half of the drainage basin. So we pick up the water at the stream crossing. We let gravity take it down to Mayor Street Drive, and then we put it in a very large pump station. We're needing to move about 300 CFS of water, which is about 9 pumps, 3 force mains. This will be quite a substantial pump station. It will be bigger than what will fit in a road, so you'll need a parcel to put it on. Then we pump it up the hill and let gravity take it to the river. It is a substantial reduction of cost when you're looking at the pipes, but because of the pump station, looking at needing to get a parcel, looking at needing to bring power in, a big pump station, it turns into a very large project. About $20 million is our initial estimate. And we assume it'll go up when we run into unforeseen issues, not related to the drainage itself. But it does, again, it picks up water way upstream, transports a lot of it directly to the river. So we do have substantial improvement. We still have about 88 homes positively impacted, no negatively impacted homes, except for the pump station area, maybe. But much less removed homes and many more just reduced. And that's the reason for that is the reductions are less. We're only getting about 0.2 to a foot of water reduction looking at a pump station. And again, the biggest difference between this and the new trunk line is the trunk line picks up water as it goes. And so it picks up water down here, picks up water in this area, Mystic Ave, everywhere. So this only picks up water at Ponus. And so we can show those reductions again, up to about a foot of reduction in certain areas, but still less than the trunk line. The third option we really wanted to take a deep dive into was looking at storage. There isn't a lot of area. This is an urbanized, developed area, so there isn't a lot of place that you can hold water without impacting homes. We did find this area just next to, I believe that's the Hunter's Lane and down the hill from Ponus Ridge Middle School. And it's a wet area. It is an area we would avoid touching the stream. We would just be cutting back the channel banks and grassing it. And we looked at how much water we could store here. One of the other key things we were looking at was not increasing the water surface elevation further than what it is already at this location. So that helps us make sure we don't impact any more homes than they're already impacted from the flooding in this area. It's also, this is a highly fundable option because it's green infrastructure. It's also relatively low construction cost. Now, construction cost, this can be a little deceiving, 2.7 million, that's for the earthwork, making space for the water. It does not include the easements we're going to need from these property owners so we can work on their property and build what we're going to build here. And typically these projects are also associated with greenways or parks or something a little bit bigger project. They don't typically, cities don't just hog out areas for storage, but they do something else so it is an opportunity. There is some opportunity to talk to the community and the landowners about that, having green space or a park that goes through their backyard. It does do a good job at reducing flooding again. But again, this isn't pulling water, but it's holding water upstream so that the peak flow, the maximum amount of water flowing through here is less. So again, we have a lot of buildings positively impacted, but many more with just reductions in flooding and very few with total removal. Storage, though, is something that you can do where you can find the space. So we're getting about 2.5 acre feet of water we can store here in the upper reaches of the drainage basin. Real quickly, this slide just shows again the reduction in flooding, and it's minimal. We're only about half a foot, again, 0.2 to about half a foot of flooding reduction through here because we're just picking up and holding the water. So another option we discussed a lot with the DPW staff is looking at distributing the storage, looking at areas in which you already have right of way. So a lot of these cul-de-sacs, this is Cornwall Cog and Ponus Ave. And so you could build storage into several of these locations. One of the things, this is an opportunity to phase. Again, it's considered green infrastructure, so there's a lot of positives of putting in the storage, but it does require further investigation. You'd want to design this well. You're going to have vehicles driving on it. It would not be just a pond. It'd have to be underground storage. But again, there is an opportunity, and with storage will become reduced surface flooding. The last drainage improvement we wanted to talk about, because it was such a big topic when we originally got into this area of Ponus and New Canaan, is the flooding occurring at 130 New Canaan Ave. And as you know or may not know, there's a short channel here that surges. This image here in the top right shows the surging of water coming out. Now the DPW staff have investigated. They've done camera work to look through the pipes downstream. We did not find any blockages, no broken pipes, no sunk pipes. There's no good hydraulic reason why this should be surging like this. There are two 36-inch pipes here coming from that channel and going downstream, and there's only one coming in. So there has to be a blockage in here for so much water to surge. So we spent a lot of time on this in the past. We want to make sure we brought it up. And so what we're recommending is that you eliminate this channel. I've seen a lot of pictures where there's a lot of this white stuff in the picture. So there might be snow getting in here or ice blocking. Somehow this is getting blocked up. If we eliminate the channel, the blockages will hopefully be eliminated, extend two 36-inch pipes just up through the grass and across the street to the next channel, put in a good trash rack, and hopefully solve this issue. Even if we found that more surging would be happening upstream, you're not going to get as large an impact to this building because more water will be able to go around it. But we do believe that, we don't see any hydraulic reason why this is being impaired and why this water should surge. So we're assuming that something is getting in here at the time just before it surges and blocking those pipes. So it's probably a maintenance fix at $43,000. It's a good project to implement and resolve this issue. So with that, I'll take any questions or pass it over to the chief again. But this is the summary of the alternatives going through and the estimated construction costs, building removals or reductions, and of course only one, building the upstream trunk line first, would cause adverse impacts. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No. Okay, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the detailed presentation.
It's like about $45 million there.
Yeah.
That's what I saw.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we move on to
Just
the,
wanted to- Before we move on, I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to make a comment, I think, could you briefly explain to folks, Mayor perhaps, or Anthony, how this then, and how we move from this presentation to capital budget to a decision, just so folks who are listening or hear this number are like, wait, what's going on? Could you just maybe give a little bit of the next steps coming based on this presentation?
Well, I can let Anthony speak about that, but from my perspective, obviously, we're investing a lot in the schools. We have to start prioritizing and trying to use our capital funds in the most efficient and effective way, and probably benefiting the greatest good. So with the school investment we're looking at now of $500 million over the next 20 years, this looks like $45 million. But we do. I mean, this is something that's been neglected for a very, very long period of time. I think that, there's talk about our AAA bond rating, and if we're not careful, we're going to lose the AAA bond rating, but it might be something that we have to look as a consequence of having to invest in these things. We can't keep the residents of Norwalk keep getting flooded. We're getting bigger storms than we ever have before. And I think that's the major problem with the flooding. We've had flooding in the past, but this is getting out of control and out of hand. So.
No, I completely agree. And I think.
And if Anthony wants to add to that.
Mayor, I believe that Anthony, he's back.
Sorry, I did drop off prematurely, Mayor. I apologize. I just caught the tail end of it. Do you mind if you had a question, or if anybody from the council had a question? To reiterate?
No, I thought, I think the public would benefit from getting just a quick, what are the next steps? So as you're conducting these design studies, as we're getting, these alternatives now presented to us from Wood and Curran, could you just talk through briefly so people know what to expect? How will this next come to the council, to the city? When are the decision points that are coming up based on this information?
Right. So for many of these flood mitigation studies that we do, no matter whether it's a small watershed or it's a 600-acre watershed like the New Canaan Ponus Avenue watershed, what will happen is the flood mitigation report will narrow down the alternatives. We'll take another bite at the alternatives. We'll narrow the scope down. We'll narrow the direction down with the consultant. And then once we reach a critical decision point, meaning, do we go for the $12 million improvement at one shot? Do we do the phase 1, phase 2 improvement, 6 and 6? But like from the presentation, you'll see that there's, very little that could be done with a small amount of capital funding. So we need to best understand that balance of what's cost prohibitive and cost beneficial. And then the next step would be, once we have that aligned and understood and a comfortable point that we know there's really no other alternatives to consider, then we would meet with the administration. We would discuss our capital funding gaps, our analysis, and then what we would do is for the upcoming budget preparation. So in December, our budget prep starts for fiscal year 24. we would prioritize and rank our projects and request. Of course, we want to do all the flood mitigation projects, but that may not be a reality. So whatever projects don't get done this year would have to be pushed to fiscal year 25. And we would obviously recommend and help the administration with that decision making, because some of these projects don't need to be done tomorrow. Of course, you could also argue that they all should have been done yesterday, but unfortunately, we only have so much staff balance with so much capital funding, and we will apply for grants. I know Woodard and Curran, Time Bond, our consultants do identify areas. We have an in-house grant coordinator too, but unfortunately, when we apply for these grants, they see Norwalk as far, I'll say, from the flood mitigation standpoint, from the financial help that, okay, there's other communities that may need that funding before the city of Norwalk. Even though we are a river and coastal community, we are in high competition with the other communities that are really in demand and have been destroyed from the flooding. So we will, by December, the studies that have finished, we will evaluate the alternatives. Again, we'll sit with the administration, maybe make another presentation to the council or at least to the committee, and then get a gauge on what we can afford with the funding that's available. And again, this fiscal year 24, this fiscal year 25, and these projects, these are not 1 year look ahead projects. These are projects that over the next 5 years, what do we plan to do? Because we know we need to do all of them, but we know we can't pay for them all one shot. So unfortunately, unless there's another ARPA relief fund coming, we will have to be selective with the projects that we move forward.
Great, thank you, Gar. That's very helpful.
You're very welcome.
Chief, if I may, can you hear me okay, Chief?
Yes, Anthony.
Okay, this is the other Anthony, Anthony Catalano. I guess there was some technical difficulties there. I just wanted to just further clarify, if I may, Chief, that as it relates specifically to New Canaan and Ponus Avenue, it's not necessarily additive. And I just wanted to clarify that we're not looking at, you're adding all those up and it's $45 million worth of mitigation measures. Essentially, it's selecting one of those alternatives and moving forward, working collectively with the city to, come up with the preferred option is. So I just wanted to clarify that as well, Chief, if I could. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thank you guys again. Now we'll turn to consent calendar. Be read by Mr. Gilstate Eichner tonight.
Thank you, Chair Livingston. So tonight's consent calendar, beginning with item 7A1, authorize the purchasing agent to issue a purchase order to AT&T Fleet Complete.
Co-region council.
Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry. Thank you. Item 6A, Corporation Council. A1, settlement, Martha Boyer v. City of Norwalk, claim number A13952, executive session. Item number 2, settlement, Vincent Ferrante v. City of Norwalk, executive session. Item 3, settlement, Bruce Morris v. City of Norwalk, Norwalk Public Schools and Norwalk Board of Ed, executive session. Item 7, A, public safety and general government. 1, authorize the purchasing agent to issue a purchase order to AT&T Fleet Complete under NASPO pricing for equipment and services of Fleet Complete for an amount not to exceed $73,000 over 3 years. Account noted. Item 2, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to sign any and all agreements, documents, and instruments with Vigilant Solutions, LLC, for the sole source purchase of Vigilant Investigative Data Platform annual subscription not to exceed $25,000 annually. Account noted. Item 3, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to sign an information sharing and access agreement with the Department of Homeland Security, DHS/Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to access national flood insurance claims data for Norwalk. Item 4, authorize the purchasing agent, Sharon Connors, to issue a purchase order to Goins Knight Company for the vehicle refurbishment of the 2010 KME aerial truck not to exceed $116,636.36. Funding for this project was approved in the 2022 to 23 capital budget. Account number to be determined. B, Economic and Community Development. Item 1, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute all documents to renew the contract for marketing services between the city of Norwalk and Dorenberg Kallenbach Advertising LLC for $150,000. Account noted. Item 3, advance the submitted applications to the Common Council for their approval at the June 14th, 2022 Common Council meeting for their inclusion in the 2022 Connecticut Neighborhood Assistance Act program. Item 4 is on consent to table. C, land use and building management. 1, authorize the purchasing agent to issue purchase orders to McGraw-Hill Publishers for Wonders Resources for grades K to 5 student literacy text/digital material for a total not to exceed $155,000. Account noted. Item 2, authorize the purchasing agent to issue purchase order to Saddleback Publishing for Multilingual Learners, MLL, reading resources for a total not to exceed $30,000. Account noted. 3, authorize the purchasing agent to issue purchase order to Barnes & Noble for middle school multilingual learners, MLL, reading resources for a total not to exceed $45,000. Account noted. 4, authorize a contingency allowance in the amount not to exceed $8,000 in the event of order adjustments. Account noted. 5A, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Save More Cooling and Heating, Inc. for the Ben Franklin Center Gym Air Conditioning Installation Project for a total not to exceed $145,100. Account noted. 5B, authorize the Office of Building Management to issue change orders on the contract for a total not to exceed $14,510. Item 6A, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Old Colony Construction, LLC, for the Wolf Pit Elementary School Oil Tank Removal Project, State Project 103-0254 CV/OT, Rowton Middle School Oil Tank Removal Project, State Project 103-0256 CVOT, Fox Run Elementary School Oil Tank Removal Project, State Project 103-0258 CVOT, and Narramac Elementary School Oil Tank Removal Project, State Project 103-0261 CVOT, for a total not to exceed $671,400. Funds are available in accounts noted. 6B, authorize the NPS Facilities Department to issue change orders on this contract for a total of $67,140. Funds are available in accounts noted. 7, authorize the purchasing agent to issue a purchase order to Special Testing Laboratories, Inc. for materials testing and field inspection services for the new Cranberry Elementary School project for a total not to exceed $90,000. Funds are available in accounts noted. 8A, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Construction Solutions Group, LLC, to provide program management services for Jefferson School Improvement Project for a total not to exceed $64,584.75. Account noted. 8B, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Construction Solutions Group, LLC, to provide program management services for New Cranberry School project for a total not to exceed $379,987.50. Account noted. 8C, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Construction Solutions Group, LLC, to provide program management services for new Norwalk High School project for a total not to exceed $1,148,110.50. Account noted. 8D, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Construction Solutions Group, LLC, to provide program management services for a new South Norwalk, SONO, school project for a total not to exceed $730,895. Account noted. D, Public Works. 1, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into a subordination agreement and such other documents incidental thereto with Norwalk Land Development LLC with respect to the city's general utility easement recorded in volume 7920, page 329 of the Norwalk Land Records, and in connection with Norwalk Land Development LLC's ELUR application to DEEP. 2, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute a second amendment to the September 8, 2020 agreement between the city of Norwalk and M. Rondano Inc. for project DRG 2021 on-call drainage improvements at various locations for a sum not to exceed $300,000. Accounts noted. 3, technical correction of the Common Council action of September 14th, 2021, item 7C4, to add accounts designated for the Olmsted Tree and Shrub Care Company, LLC, for the supply and planting of trees and shrubs. Accounts noted. 4, technical correction of the Common Council action dated October 12th, 2021, item 7B6A and item 7B6B, to add accounts designated for Deering Construction Company, Inc. for project RD 2021-2-2, concrete curb and sidewalks at various locations, account numbers noted. 5, technical correction of the Common Council action dated July 14th, 2020, item 7C7A and item 7C7B, to add accounts designated for the Grosso Construction Companies, LLC, for project RD 2020-1, concrete curb and sidewalks at various locations, account numbers noted. 6, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to concur with project authorization letter, POW, by the State of Connecticut Department of Transportation for State Project 102-364, West Avenue / Belden Avenue, Adaptive Traffic Signal System, dated May 24th, 2022, and submit a demand deposit payment of $4,345 to the Connecticut Department of Transportation. Account number noted. E, finance and claims. 1, accept and approve the report of the Claims Committee dated June 9th, 2022. 2, for informational purposes only, narrative on tax collections dated June 9th, 2022. 3, for informational purposes only, monthly tax collectors report dated June 2022. 4A, authorize the mayor to execute the lease NASPO purchase order, State of Connecticut contract number 16PSX0180 / NASPO contract number ADS P016-169901 with Quadient Inc. for a 60-month lease, a total amount not to exceed $20,247. Funding available from account noted. 4B, authorize the purchasing department to issue change orders on the contract for a total not to exceed $2,025. Funding available from account noted. 5, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute agreement with Clifton Larson Allen LLP, CLA, for additional work related to GASB 87 implementation. A total amount not to exceed $70,000. Account noted. I believe that completes the consent.
And that was very impressive.
Do you need a break? Do you need a break?
All good.
Wow. Okay, and I'll call for a vote on the consent calendar as read. All in favor, indicate by raising your hands. Any opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimous. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston. That'll bring us to item 7B2, Mr. Kites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item B2 authorizes Mayor Harry W. Rilling to execute a contract for landscaping services between the city of Norwalk and Meticulous Landscaping, not to exceed $180,000 every year for the next 3 years. And they have 3 separate account numbers noted. I'd like to move that item and briefly speak to it if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Kites, you have the floor.
Thank you. The reason I took this item off consent, because I did have some concerns. We only had one respondent to this RFP. Also, the term of the agreement, I didn't believe 3 years was enough, was too long of a term, and various other reasons. Just want to say that I think it's the responsibility of this council to find savings, regardless how big or small those savings are. And I don't think we're doing it with this contract. Therefore, I just wanted to take that off consent and vote no on the item.
Okay, Mr. Kites has moved the item, and has there been any other comment or discussion? Mr. Livingston.
I just want to note that with respect to Mr. Kites' comments, I think locking in a 3-year contract at a time when inflation is raging is actually beneficial to the city in terms of locking in a price over the time period.
Thank you. Further discussion? Ms. Shanahan.
I think that we've had some experience with this contractor too. I believe that they've been working for the city for 3 to 5 years, so we're quite familiar with them and their work. So I don't think we would be moving it forward if we didn't feel comfortable with that. I do know that some of my conservation groups use this group as well and are comfortable with the provider.
Ms. Young.
So I think I will be supporting this. I think though one of the comments that we did have was that although this contractor we've used for a while, I think that because we were expanding the breadth of the work, I think one of the thoughts was that do a 1 year, and if that went well, then you could possibly do the 2 year. So I don't know how that would impact the cost, if that's something that we could secure up front, you know, with the 1 plus the 2. But I think there was some conversation about that because we are almost doubling, it seems, the work that they had been doing prior. But I don't think that there was any question about the work, the quality of the work.
Thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Jilski-Eichner.
Just to also briefly comment, I know that Mr. Kites raised the point that this was the only bidder, but I do want to be clear that my understanding is that the bid was put out as properly. It's not that there was this is not a sole source contract. There merely was only one respondent. I think that's again important to be clear. We're not approving a sole source contract here.
Further comment or discussion? Anybody on the Zoom?
David Huvelman. I just also wanted to say that I think it's important. This is a Norwalk company that employs local area people, Norwalk, Stamford residents, and it has a very diverse hiring practice. In fact, it's close to 90% of their employees are minority and or women, which I think is really important because again, this is promoting the diversity and equity within our community. And since we do, echoing what Ms. Shanahan said, we do have a track record with this particular contractor. I see no problem in a 3-year contract with them.
Thank you, Mr. Hooverman. Further discussion? I don't see anybody else on the Zoom. Okay, seeing no further discussion, I'll call the vote. All in favor of item 7B2? Opposed? And that abstentions. So there for one opposition, Mr. Kites, and the others were in favor. That brings us to the end of our agenda, I believe, for the evening.
Get a motion. I was going to say, can I get my motion? Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn of all people, Mr. Revolus. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Were adjourned at 8:56. Thank you all for your time.